Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're getting into some really crucial updates to UK housing benefit rules. These are the ones coming into full effect in August 2025, and honestly, this stuff is vital for financial well-being across the UK. So our mission, as always, is to dig into the sources you've shared and pull out the key insights. We want to help you quickly get your head around who qualifies under these new rules, why these changes matter now, and what you really need to know to handle the system. We've looked at everything from eligibility, income limits, and how housing benefit fits or maybe doesn't fit with universal credit these days.
And it really is a deep dive worth taking. These aren't just, small adjustments. Think about it, over 1 million households currently rely on housing benefit. But these specific updates, they could force a pretty critical rethink of financial planning for a big chunk of them. It's not just policy jargon. It's a direct shift in the day-to-day economics for potentially hundreds of thousands, especially pensioners and more vulnerable groups. Understanding this new setup isn't just helpful, it's pretty essential.
Okay, let's unpack this right from the start then. For anyone who's new to this or maybe just needs a quick refresher, what exactly is housing benefit and how did we get to this point?
Sure. So housing benefit, or HB as it's often called, is basically a welfare payment. It comes from your local council here in the UK. Its main job is to help people who are on a low income or maybe getting certain other benefits to pay their rent. It's important to say, though, it generally doesn't cover mortgage costs, just rent. And while it's been a feature for decades, it's been gradually phased out for most working-age people over the last few years, mostly being replaced by universal credit.
Right, so it has this long history, but this August 2025 update feels like a really significant moment. Why is it being seen as such a big step in welfare reform? Is it just another rule change, or is there something, more fundamental going on?
Oh, it's definitely more fundamental. This August 2025 update, it's a really significant part of the government's bigger ongoing welfare reform agenda. Now, it's true, most working age folks are already pointed towards universal credit for housing help. But housing benefit, it's still vital for millions, pensioners particularly, and certain vulnerable claimants. These new rules, kicking in next August, they're not just minor tweaks. They're about setting much clearer and frankly stricter boundaries on exactly who can still apply for HB. They also bring in fresh income assessments, updated capital limits, that savings, and they really clarify how HB interacts with other key benefits, things like pension credit and disability allowances. It's really about consolidating and sharply defining the remaining job of housing benefit.
That leads right to the big question for so many listening. Okay, what does all this actually mean for me? If I'm wondering if I still qualify under these updated rules, who are the specific groups who can still claim housing benefit after August 2025?
Right. The updated rules do make the eligibility clearer, though definitely more restricted than before. So first, and probably the most important group, pensioners. If you've reached state pension age by August 2025, you're one of the main groups still eligible. Pensioners on a low income, or maybe getting pension credit, which is that vital top-up for older people. They often qualify for full or maybe partial housing benefit. Depends on their savings, of course. This is a really critical protection, specifically designed so older people aren't left struggling with rent after they retire.
Okay, so pensioners are key. Who else?
Well, beyond pensioners, housing benefit also stays available for people living in supported, sheltered, or temporary accommodation. This is important. It means regardless of your age, if you're in one of these specific housing types, you might still qualify. Supported housing, for example, that includes places where you get care, supervision, or, specific support as part of the deal. And temporary accommodation, which councils often arrange for homeless households, that's also covered by HB. These rules make sure vulnerable people in these sort of structured living situations keep getting the housing support they need, which, frankly, universal credit isn't really set up to handle in quite the same way.
Right. And you mentioned disability benefits.
Yes, exactly. Finally, claimants getting certain disability-related benefits can also have additional entitlements. So if you get benefits like Disability Living Allowance, DLA, or Personal Independence Payment, PIP, or maybe attendance allowance, these are all payments meant to help with the extra cost of having a long-term illness or disability. And if you're in supported housing or have particular care needs, you can still receive housing benefit. This part of the rules really tries to protect some of the most vulnerable households from being sort of left behind by the bigger shift to universal credit.
That really clarifies who's still in. But it definitely raises the flip side. What if I'm, say, a working age listener? I'm not in supported accommodation, and suddenly I need help with rent. Am I just completely out of luck for housing benefit now? What's my first step?
Well, unfortunately, for most other working age adults, yes, housing benefit is largely off the table now. Universal credit is really the only way forward for housing support in that situation. So if you're below pension age, renting privately, and you don't fit into one of those very specific exempt accommodation types we just talked about, well, you're highly unlikely to qualify for housing benefit anymore. The whole system is definitely pushing most people who are expected to work towards universal credit for that housing element. So your immediate next step, it would have to be looking into universal credit eligibility.
Okay. Beyond just who can claim, the sources really hammer home the details about income and savings. What are the hard financial limits people need to know about under these new August 2025 rules?
Yes, this is a really critical point and one that honestly trips a lot of people up. The updated rules keep some pretty strict limits on both savings and income. For savings, the general rule is if your total savings are over £16,000, you normally cannot claim housing benefit. Simple as that, usually.
16,000 pounds.
Okay. However, and this is a really key detail to remember, there's a big exception. That £16,000 limit does not apply if you also receive something called pension credit guarantee credit.
Ah, the guarantee credit part.
Exactly. Think of pension credit guarantee credit as a specific vital part of pension credit. It's designed to top up the income of the very poorest pensioners. If you get that specific element, it basically signals your income is so low that the savings limit for housing benefit is just waived entirely. It doesn't count.
That's a crucial difference. And what about income itself?
Right, income. Well, pretty much all your income sources are looked at when they calculate your entitlement. So that includes money from work, obviously any private or company pensions you might have, and other benefits too. The basic idea is clear. The more income or savings you have, the less housing benefit you'll get. The August 2025 guidelines are meant to try and simplify the calculations a bit, but that core principle, that stays exactly the same.
Now, the rules for couples. You hear stories about how confusing this has been. Has this August 2025 update genuinely made that simpler? Or are there still pitfalls people need to watch out for?
You're right. Historically, it's been a real headache for couples. The August 2025 rules do try to give much clearer guidance, aiming to cut down on some of that old complexity. The absolute key thing here is the age of both partners. It breaks down like this. First, if both partners are below state pension age, they must claim universal credit for help with housing costs. Housing benefit generally isn't an option for them at all.
Okay, straightforward enough for younger couples.
Then the tricky one. If one partner is over state pension age but the other one is under, the system generally treats them as a working age couple, and that means they're directed towards universal credit for their housing support. This rule is really important to get your head around because even if one partner is technically a pensioner, the couple as a whole might still fall under the universal credit rules for housing.
Right, so it's the younger partner's age that dictates the benefit route in that scenario.
Yeah. Essentially, yes. And finally, it's only if both partners are over state pension age that they can apply as a couple for housing benefit. This rule is really about standardizing things, making it much more consistent about who goes where for housing support. Less confusion, hopefully.
The sources talk constantly about this ongoing shift from housing benefit to universal credit. It's been happening for years now. Could you maybe break down the practical differences? What are the real-world implications of this move for someone listening?
Yeah, that shift is absolutely central to all the welfare reforms in the UK. Universal credit, or UC, unlike housing benefit, is designed as a single monthly payment that bundles everything together, including a housing element. So it covers rent, but it's paid very differently from how housing benefit usually works. UC is typically paid monthly and, crucially, in arrears, meaning after the period it covers. And it's calculated alongside other support like job seekers allowance or child support, all rolled into one payment.
Monthly in arrears. That sounds like a big adjustment for people used to getting rent money more frequently.
It really is. That subtle shift, maybe from weekly or fortnightly HB, sometimes paid direct to the landlord, to a monthly UC payment going to the claimant. It might seem small on paper, but it's a huge budgeting challenge. It demands a whole different approach to managing money for millions who've always budgeted week to week or fortnight to fortnight. It's like suddenly switching from a weekly grocery budget to a monthly one overnight. It needs a complete mental reset.
So the main implication is
The main implication is that for most working age people who aren't in those specific exempt types of accommodation, you have to apply for universal credit for housing support. Housing benefit just isn't an option anymore. But, as we've said, pensioners and certain vulnerable groups, they remain under the housing benefit system, at least for now. So it's not HB disappearing entirely, but a much clearer split who gets what, and with very different payment patterns.
Okay. And for those renting privately, the sources kept bringing up local housing allowance rates. What exactly are they, and why are the August 2025 adjustments to these rates so important?
Local housing allowance, or LHA. Yes, these are absolutely vital if you're renting privately and getting housing benefit, or indeed the housing element of universal credit. These LHA rates basically set the maximum amount of rent that your benefit can cover in your specific local area. The council decides these rates. The rate you get also depends on your household size, whether you're assessed as needing a one-bedroom place, a two-bedroom, and so on.
And they're changing in August 2025.
Critically, yes. In August 2025, these LHA rates are being reviewed and adjusted by many councils across the country. The idea is to make them reflect local market rents more accurately, because they've been frozen for quite a while in many places. Now, the importance of this, it really can't be overstated. For some people, these adjustments might mean they get more help, covering more of their actual rent. That's the hope. But for others, even with adjustments, their LHA rate might still be capped below what their landlord actually charges, meaning they have to find the difference themselves. So knowing your specific local LHA rate is absolutely crucial if you rely on benefits to pay your private rent.
Right, absolutely crucial. So if someone's listening to all this, they think, okay, I might actually qualify under these new rules. What are the practical steps? How do they apply?
Okay, the application process itself, it continues to be managed mainly by your local council. That's where you've always applied for housing benefit. From August 2025, councils are really pushing online applications. It just makes things quicker and smoother for everyone. But importantly, if you need one, paper forms will definitely still be available. When you apply, you'll need to provide the usual stuff: proof of who you are, details about your rent, like your tenancy agreement, proof of income payslips, benefit letters, that sort of thing, and evidence of any savings you have. Bank statements are typical.
Is it any easier for pensioners?
Yes, good point. For pensioners who are applying for housing benefit at the same time as they apply for pension credit, the process is often a bit simpler. That's because some information can be shared directly between the DWP, that's the Department for Work and Pensions, and the local council. It just cuts down on the paperwork for the applicant. But the main advice, really for everyone, is apply as early as you possibly can. Don't wait. It helps avoid any potential delays in getting the support you might be entitled to.
That makes sense. Apply early. But what happens if it doesn't go to plan? What if the council says no, or they award less than expected, and you think they've made a mistake? What are your rights then?
You absolutely have rights, and it's so important you know them. If your housing benefit application is refused, or maybe the amount they offer is reduced, and you believe that decision is wrong, you have the right to challenge it. The process in 2025 stays pretty consistent with how it is now. Your first step: ask the council for what's called a reconsideration. It's basically an internal review where they have another look at your case and their decision.
And if you're still not happy after that?
If you're still unhappy after the reconsideration, you then have the right to appeal to an independent body called a tribunal. These are separate from the council. And it's definitely worth remembering that many claimants do successfully challenge decisions, particularly if there have been clear errors, maybe in how they assess your income or savings. So staying informed about your rights through that whole process, it's really essential under these updated rules.
Now, one interesting angle our sources mention is that these changes don't just hit tenants. They apparently impact landlords too. What does this mean for the sort of wider housing picture, beyond just the person claiming?
You're absolutely right. The ripple effect is definitely significant. It touches both tenants and landlords. For tenants, especially those who might not qualify for HB anymore and have to switch to universal credit, there's that potential struggle we talked about paying rent on time. That monthly in arrears payment schedule for UC can create real budgeting difficulties, particularly if you're used to weekly or fortnightly HB, maybe going straight to your landlord. So tenants really need to be proactive. Check your eligibility early, understand the new payment timing if you move to UC, adjust your budget.
And for landlords?
Well, for landlords, these changes can directly affect their rental income stream. Any delays in tenants receiving their support or reductions in the amount they get could obviously impact the landlord's cash flow. It might affect the financial viability of letting out their properties, especially at the lower end of the market. So it's really advisable for landlords to also understand these changes, to be aware of what their tenants might be going through, and maybe think about how they manage things. It genuinely affects the whole system, requiring awareness on both sides of that tenancy agreement.
Looking bigger picture then, our sources are pretty clear that August 2025 is just another step, part of a much longer-term government plan for housing support in the UK. What's the ultimate vision here, and what might that mean for more changes down the line?
Yeah, the government's long-term strategy is quite clear. It's to move the vast majority of benefit claimants onto universal credit. The aim is a more streamlined, supposedly simpler, consolidated welfare system. August 2025, while a big step, is definitely part of that broader journey, not the final stop. While the current rules do protect pensioners and specific vulnerable groups under housing benefit, at least for now, you've got many campaigners actively arguing that pensioners, in particular, should be kept safe within the housing benefit system indefinitely. They strongly oppose any future plans to move that group onto universal credit.
So uncertainty remains for some groups long term.
Absolutely. It's safe to say that while these updates bring some clarity for the immediate future, further changes or tweaks to housing support could well happen in the years ahead. The best advice for anyone relying on the support or potentially needing it is just to stay updated. Keep an eye on official government announcements to make sure you don't miss out on entitlements or get caught out by new rules.
So if we had to boil it all down, it sounds like the absolutely critical message for everyone listening is, don't just assume the old rules apply anymore. You have to proactively check your specific circumstances against these new August 2025 criteria. That's the main takeaway.
Exactly that. The most crucial piece of advice for you, the listener, is check your situation carefully. Really understand these new criteria we've discussed today. And if you think you might qualify for housing benefit under these rules, get that application into your local council early. Don't delay.
Okay. And maybe just a final thought to leave everyone with. Beyond the immediate money aspect, what does this ongoing shift in housing support, moving from these targeted benefits towards a big consolidated system like universal credit, what does that really signify about how the UK social safety net is evolving? And how might these changes keep reshaping how we think about housing access and support, especially for different generations? Definitely something to ponder. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into your sources today.